All right, folks. So, a lot going on the Ukraine front. Obviously, that has been most of the news this week. So, we're just going to back it up a little bit here. Things are not great between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky. Not great at all. So, here's Donald Trump a few days ago, February 14th, almost a week ago now. Trump accused Biden of starting the war in Ukraine. For decades, Russia has been clear that NATO membership for Ukraine was a hard red line. Yet Biden pushed for membership anyways, provoking Russia. So here is Donald Trump really talking down the idea of NATO membership for Ukraine.
Pretty accurate. I don't see any way that a country in Russia's position could allow them, just in their position, could allow them to join NATO. I don't see that happening. And long before President Putin, Russia was very strong on the fact that I believe that's the reason the war started, because Biden went out and said that they could join NATO, and he shouldn't have said that. As soon as he said that, I said, you know what? You're going to have a war now, and I was right about that. This is a war that would have never happened if I were president.
You don't think it's President Biden's fault, not President Putin? I mean, he's the one.
I think Biden is incompetent, and I think when he said that they could join NATO, I thought that was a very stupid thing to say. I thought when he said, well, it depends if it's a minor incursion. In other words, it's okay if Russia does a minor incursion. I thought that was a very foolish thing to say.
All right. So talking down NATO membership, then we have this, obviously, which gets even more severe, although accurate in my point of view. Trump argues Ukraine should not have started the war. So here he is now suggesting that it was Ukraine that started the war, not Russia.
I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic, so sad.
He just loves pivoting to that.
Okay. Those clips that, we're spending a lot of time right now for good reason, critiquing a lot of what's going on with the Trump administration. That's his strength right there. I mean, that's as much the reason that he's president as the fact that the Democrats ran a guy with half a brain and then a woman without an idea as a follow-up. Like, this is great. This is great. Like, this is something that the left has been saying for years and years and years and years. I mean, this has been half the gray zones reporting on Ukraine has been this. Yes, we did it. We caused it. Didn't have to happen. Deal could have been made last year. To watch him just in his very casual New York, yeah, this didn't have to happen. It could have made a deal. I could have made a deal.
Could have made a deal for him.
Would have got most of the land. To be honest, Joe Biden, out the fucking lunch.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like that, and that's him at his best. Very charismatic, very likable in these clips. And, I mean, that's where you see this is a lot of his appeal.
Right. Absolutely. And, like I was a little bit, first of all, when I first saw that, I was like, well, was he talking specifically about Ukraine or about Europe? But I guess it must have been specifically about Ukraine, since they made us think about not being invited to the talks. And whether he's talking about Ukraine or Europe, it really doesn't even matter, because, if this is a proxy war, which it is, then what he's basically saying is, by you shouldn't have started it, that could mean Ukraine or Europe or the United States for that matter. It doesn't even matter who he's talking about. The point remains the same. And who was not so receptive to that point, of course, was Volodymyr Zelensky, who then fires back that Trump lives in a world of disinformation space.
President Trump, with all due respect, he is the leader of American people whom we respect a lot. Unfortunately, he lives in this disinformation space.
So, Trump and Zelensky have had a tense relationship, but a cordial one. They've appeared on camera together. They appeared on camera together during the transition when Trump was president-elect. And you could tell, they kind of kept formalities, nice, but there was some tension under the surface. Well, now, obviously, it has boiled over, as most tensions between Trump and his enemies do. And here comes the big one. Here comes the hammer. So Trump tweets this out on his Truth Social. Think of it. A modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelensky, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, in big capital letters and quote marks, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed, while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization, and that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us? We have a big, beautiful ocean of separation. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is, quote, missing. He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections, Zelensky better move fast, or he is not going to have a country left. That's the big sentence. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do.
I have never been able to figure out the quotation marks.
Yeah,
where does he get this from?
That's his stroke of genius, man. That's, that's just one of those sort of artistic flourishes that you can't really understand, It's like Hitchcock putting himself in every film,
Yeah,
it's just
right.
one of those things. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions have unnecessarily died. And so it continues. So, yeah, that is dropping the hammer,
Yeah.
and that is obviously what needed to be said for many years now. Since it was obvious that Ukraine was going to try and, drag the rest of the world into this war, which is, of course, the only way they could possibly achieve a victory. And we have a couple more segments, obviously, that are going to break down the delusional reaction to this by liberals and Democrats. But look, that's obviously the complete right take. Elon Musk now getting in on the action here. Zelensky killed an American journalist. Yes, this is something to consider as well. Now, Trump didn't bring this up, but his right-hand man certainly did. Now, as Nabi pointed out, how times have changed. It's almost like these big tech oligarchs just cozy up to power, right? It's almost like they'll say anything to curry favor with whoever's in power at the moment. Yeah, right, exactly. So in March 2022, hold strong Ukraine. Elon actually helped Ukraine quite a bit, right? Didn't he offer Starlink services to Ukraine for free?
Starlink service.
Exactly. And here he is, Zelensky killed an American journalist, referring, of course, to Gonzalo Lira. So this David Sacks tweet, this is from January of 2024, but this has been getting a lot of play over the last day or two, understandably. Gonzalo Lira's last public statement is chilling. He knew that if arrested, he would die in a Ukrainian prison. So here is this video.
The start of the genesis of this whole situation is because I had an opinion that went against the narrative. And that's why I went to prison. And that's why, if I'm arrested again, I will die in prison. So I ask you, please, as many people as possible, the American State Department knows exactly who I am and the situation I'm currently involved in. And they know the fate that awaits me. They know it. They have that saying that that I forget the wording exactly. You know, I'm a little stressed out, as you can imagine, but they have that saying that people are fundamentally good, but for evil to triumph, all you need is the indifference of good people. Please don't be indifferent to my fate. I ask you this very humbly. Please recognize that, well, the literal death that awaits me if this doesn't work out. Understand what's going on.
Tragically, that was the last anyone ever saw of Gonzalo Lira. This will come up in a future segment, but I think this is worth featuring twice. This is an actual tweet from the actual Newsweek magazine. There are concerns that the Ukrainian president could be voted out of office if the country holds an election. Not exactly a mic drop response to he's a dictator. Not exactly. Not exactly.
Yeah.
And so now you have the United States negotiating with Russia in Saudi Arabia. Ukraine is out of those talks. I made the argument that, and this is not an argument that I'm terribly fond of making in every context, because I'm not one to, claim American ownership of things. It's just not my sensibility, I will admit. But, we've bankrolled this war. You were happy to have us bankroll the war. If you're happy to have us bankroll the war, then guess what? You kind of have to let us negotiate on your behalf. Now you could say, well, he's not negotiating. He's giving away the game. They lost. It was obvious they were going to lose. Losing is terrible, which is why we don't think the war should have happened. We don't think the war should have happened. I don't support Russia's military objectives or military incursions. I haven't been rooting for Russia to pummel Ukraine. We've been advocating the opposite. We've been advocating for peace talks so it stops. And we think that Russia's diplomatic requests to avoid the war were reasonable enough to the point where they should have been agreed upon before it started. How this got distorted into a position that is somehow hostile to Ukraine or the Ukrainian people is amazing, but not so amazing when mainstream news articles can print something as absurd as this and have the American population at first swallow it hook, line, and sinker. Now, of course, polling has turned dramatically against continued funding of the Ukraine war, which is why Donald Trump has the mandate to end it, which is why he seems intent on doing that. And that is, of course, welcome news to any sane person who does not want World War III nuclear devastation, or just very simply put, does not want to see more generations of Ukrainian men killed for no reason.
This is yet another example. We didn't get to this with Shama. I was going to ask about immigration, but Scott Jennings, I thought, hit it on the head on CNN. This clip went kind of viral. He said Trump won by taking the 80% side of every issue, while the Democrats took the 20% side of every issue. Seeing the Democrats, the liberals, their media, Newsweek, trying to drum up some kind of outrage at the idea of no longer keeping this very dangerous proxy war with a nuclear power going, that's a prime example of it. Like the mentality of somebody who would write that without any sense of irony, without any sense of how Kafkaesque a formulation that is, how absurd a thing that is to say. Yes, well, if we have elections, there is fear we might lose. So election cannot happen to preserve democracy. It's insane. It's like a Joseph Heller catch-22 scenario to say something like that. The people who still believe this, and some of us have them in our social media still, that's a very small number of people, man. That's a very small number of people. Like, you really are down to 20% who actually could read a headline like that without it striking them as odd.
Right.
Who
And
are
weird.
who are that brainwashed into a narrative. Oh, noble Ukraine. Oh, poor Ukraine. Like that, and this is why they're winning, man. This is why they're winning. I'm seeing so many people who are just, you said it. 2016 broke the liberals and 2024 broke the left. I'm seeing so many people who are just, they're seeing so many left objectives being fulfilled under this administration that, hey, man, it's hard to be in opposition. A lot of people are just like, well, fuck it. I guess I'm just going to go with this. I guess I'm going to join the winning team. I mean, they share a lot of my ideas anyway.
Please clap.